male or?
A good-sized man, or something that looks like a man.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was.
Welcome to Sasquatch Hypotheses.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
Son of a bitch is about 6'9".
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
And the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's a big, real big person.
But it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person, somebody really big. But he's all in black.
Is he a black male or a white male? Did you actually see whether, or was he just wearing black?
He's all black and he's big. He is big.
Good evening, folks. Tonight we're going to have another reading by Dee Dee about a guy who was in a state park, got attacked by a group of Sasquatch, tried to report it to state park, and they tried to cover it up. So then after that we're going to hear a new segment called Old Bear's Den. So let's get on with the show.
Hi everyone, this is Dee Dee sharing another encounter with you from the internet. This one's from Reddit, submitted by D. Carson, and it goes like this. Last September, I was fishing at a state park here in Hard Labor Creek in Rutledge, outside of Monroe, Georgia. I had been to this lake many times before, having recently taken up fishing as a hobby. I met an older guy here who liked to go out on his kayak, not to fish, but just for fun, I guess. We became friends, and he told me that a few times when he was out on this lake, he experienced kids, he thought, who were hiding in the nearby woods, throwing rocks at him whenever he stayed out after dark. I never thought anything of it other than stupid kids. He told me that the rocks never hit him and he was never harmed, but some of those rocks being thrown at him were pretty good sized. I dropped my boat in at the ramp about 3 p.m. and started fishing at the far part of the lake as usual. Caught several fish in different locations, including a pretty large catfish. Time seemed to get away from me, and I was quite a bit away from the boat ramp when the sun went down. Approaching the ramp closer, I could hear fish splashing in the water in what would be considered the cul-de-sac right next to the boat ramp. Fishing by boat at this state park was only permitted until sunset, and it was far past that time, for my boat should have been out of the water. Thoughts on catching the big one had me trolling over to where I'd heard the big fish splashing, and I threw in a line. About this time, I heard a knocking like someone was hitting a tree with a baseball bat rig 3 times. It was close. I would guess maybe 50 yards or so into the forest right in front of me. The first thought that entered my mind was this group of kids who I was told were throwing these rocks were now trying to scare me. I grabbed my emergency paddle and banged it against the side of my Pelican Bass Raider boat a few times to alert them to the fact that I wasn't an easy target. As soon as the last bang was struck on the side of the boat, 3 audible knocks emerged from the woods behind me, seeming to come from really far off in the distance, but I couldn't tell how far. Then 4 knocks came from the direction in front of me and at the same distance as the 3 did before. Immediately following the last set of knocks, it sounded like an army squad was descending upon me from the woods. Leaves were rustling and branches were breaking as my location was being rushed by at least several different creatures. I'm an ex-military sniper and spent many months in the Amazon jungle in the early 90s, but can't speak of that, so fear has never been an option for me. Never in my life have I felt fear like I did that night. After dropping my rod in the water, I hit the reverse of my trolling motor at the highest setting and ran the boat into some tree branches which were jutting up from the lake from a submerged tree. While stuck, I tried to regain my composure, grabbed a flashlight, and shined it into the forest towards the tree line. Standing there was this hairy ape with a face like the picture of pre-man of Darwin's theory staring back at me. I then dropped the flashlight into the boat and gunned it to the ramp. When the boat hit the ramp, I jumped out and ran full throttle to my truck and sat there until 9:30 p.m., hoping that a forest employee would come through to do a final check that everyone had cleared the lake. No one ever came, so I mustered up the courage to back my truck up and load my boat. There were no noises from the forest, just deathly quiet. I felt as though I was being watched. Without securing my boat, I got out of there. The next day, I called the state park line to report it, but got nowhere with the employee who took my call. I felt insulted as I was asked if I was drinking. I was also told that it was probably a herd of deer and that my imagination probably got the best of me. Also, I made a report to the BFRO, and it still hasn't been posted after 5 months. Families rent cabins and hike trails at the state park, and I worry that someone will get hurt by these creatures which inhabit the woods here. My account seems to have been brushed under the rug. That's why I joined this site and a few others here. I've read about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster as a kid, but after that encounter, I now truly believe and fear the woods. Well, that's the encounter. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have an encounter that you'd like me to read, pull that trigger back and shoot me an email. My email address is mydd123@gmail.com. And again, thanks for listening.
Okay, there's another great narration by Dee Dee. So, you guys in the panel, you have any comments to make about Dee Dee's narration?
Yeah, go figure. BFRO didn't post it or anything. Didn't even acknowledge them. Figures.
Well, really, what I've heard is that what they do now is they don't bother. Well, they don't post them to their site until after somebody's investigated. So if they don't have somebody available to do an investigation, they don't post them there. But it still doesn't excuse them not at least responding to the guy or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, at least acknowledge they got the darn thing.
Yeah, help the guy out, you know. I don't know, something. Instead of just leaving him hanging like that. Anybody else? Amy? Darcy?
Well, I think the BFRO is just a joke anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Did you contact them about the situation over at your house?
Sure did.
And
Sent the letter, same thing I sent to you, Rick. Not a word.
Huh.
That was over a year ago.
What about you, Ralph?
Well, I think it's just a typical BFRO. They don't want all these out there. They don't want anything that comes close to that would show that they're aggressive towards human beings.
Oh, you'd think the BFRO is pro flute player?
Well, basically, that's pretty much the way they are. I mean, they don't ever. I've read a bunch of reports from them, and 99% of their reports that I read are just about, the person saw the Bigfoot, didn't have anything about reports that were that the Bigfoot showed aggression towards the person or anything of that nature.
Yeah. What about the encounter itself? That's pretty interesting. The guy's right there and flashes light in the woods, and there it is, staring right at him. Okay,
yeah, especially the human-like face. That always gets me. It's like, what are they, man? A human face? Come on.
Get over here and lay down.
That kind of tells me they're not an animal. I mean, they got to be some kind of hybrid, maybe. I don't know.
Well, between the facial features, the female breasts, because human females are the only one carry breasts all the time, and that kind of thing. I walking upright. I don't see how you can think anything other than that they're another Homo, offshoot. or I don't know what's the correct term, hominin. They've changed it evidently.
Yeah, hominid or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so tonight we're having a new segment called Old Bear's Den. So let me go ahead and kick that off.
It's time for Old Bear's Den, a new segment here on Sasquatch, where Old Bear himself reads encounter reports which he collects from the many people he meets during his long journeys on the road. And now, without any further ado, we give you Old Bear.
Thank y'all for having me on tonight. And this is the Old Bear. I would like to invite you all into my den tonight. Please come in and bring your snacks with you and your drink. And pull up a pile of bones and have a sit down. And while you're at it, bring in a popcorn ball for the Old Bear. You know, us old bears don't get grumpy when we don't get our sweets. So tonight I have for y'all 3 encounters from people that I've spoken to out on the road. These people didn't want their names given out or anything of that nature because they're afraid that if they are associated with Bigfoot or say they saw one, that they'll have trouble with their jobs. The first one comes from a 55-year-old trucker who's been driving for 25 years. This driver, we spoke for quite a few hours, and we were both near Hallsville, Texas, and this is where he had his sighting, was near Hallsville, Texas. This driver's hunted in 4 western states for antelope, cougar, and elk. And I asked him about if he'd heard anything strange in the woods around where he lives, and he said no, he'd never heard anything strange, never had anything happen to him while he was out deer hunting near his home. The gentleman told me his story at an undisclosed location at a truck stop, and for fear of being ridiculed by other drivers and fear of losing his job before retiring in a few years. He told me he was at a rest area on a 4-lane near Hallsville, Texas, for his 10-hour break. He got there about 11 p.m. and parked and got out and went to the restroom and then came back to his truck and fixed his dinner in his truck. Right after he watched a movie on DVD, he fell asleep. Around 3 a.m., he got woken up because something slapped his truck. He thought it might be a bunch of kids messing around with his truck, so he got up and turned his lights on. As soon as he did this, he saw the Bigfoot looking over the hood right at him. It shocked him and he jumped back into the sleeper. He sat there and watched it walk over to his passenger window. It stood there looking in the window, and he said it bared its teeth and hissed through its teeth. It just did this for a few seconds, and then it slapped the side of the sleeper, and it made him jump. He said the Bigfoot just turned around and walked off into the trees beside the roadside parking area. This man was clearly reliving the encounter as he was telling me his story. And I asked him a few more questions, particularly about hair color. He said the hair was a brown color and it was long on its arms and head. He said the skin was a light ashen color. He said he never saw the earlobes, and he said the eyes were far apart and all black. He said the Bigfoot had hair along its cheeks, but not under its ape-like nose. He told me he felt like this thing was unhappy because he was there and had his truck idling to stay cool as he slept. He said he looked out the windows to make sure it was gone, but left his lights on for the rest of the night. He said he didn't go back to sleep until around daylight, roughly 6 o'clock in the morning, and went through a pack of cigarettes between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock a.m. And here is encounter two. This happened near Falk, Arkansas. I was on my way to Oklahoma when I talked to this driver. This driver was heading south and decided to take his required 30-minute break. There was very little traffic, so he pulled off on an exit ramp and jumped out to relieve himself. He set his air brakes and went around his passenger side of the tractor for a little privacy. He left his lights on as his hazards, and as soon as he was done, he heard footsteps on the gravel in front of his truck. He said he turned around and saw this very tall creature staring at him. He saw it as a dark form as it was just at the edge of his headlights. He said he could see the eyes and they were glowing red. He said the hair was all black and he estimated it at 7 to 7.5 feet tall. He said the Bigfoot just stood there and watched him. He said he faced this Bigfoot and kept his back to the truck as he went back around to the driver's side. He said as he opened the driver's door, the Bigfoot made a noise. He doesn't know if it was a growl or something of another noise. He said he couldn't explain it because he
We lost you there, Ralph. I heard you say he couldn't explain it, and that was it. Ralph, we're not hearing you, brother. Can one of you guys text Ralph and tell him that his audio is out? And he's gone. So I guess his internet connection dropped out. Okay, well, anybody have any comments about the stories that he told? Hold on, I think he popped back in here. Now he's out again.
This young lady of 20 years old was
Ralph.
scared to death from the story.
Ralph, we lost you like 5 minutes ago, buddy. You said something about he didn't know how to explain it, and then you dropped out. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Rick.
Yeah, you said I believe he looked out, he couldn't explain it, something about the Bigfoot over his hood or something, and then we lost you.
Okay. The guy saw the Bigfoot across his hood after he turned his headlights on. He said it shocked him and he jumped back into the sleeper. He sat there and watched it walk over to his passenger window, and it stood there looking in the window. And he said it bared its teeth at him and hissed through its teeth. It just did this for a few seconds, and then it slapped the side of the sleeper and it made him jump. He said the Bigfoot finally just turned around and walked off into the trees beside the roadside parking area. This man was clearly reliving the encounter as he was telling me his story. He said the hair was a brown color and it was long on its arms and head. The skin was a light ashen color. He never saw earlobes. He said the eyes were far apart and all black. The Bigfoot had hair along its cheeks, but not under its ape-like nose. He told me he felt like this thing was unhappy because he was there and had his truck idling to stay cool as he slept. He said he looked out the windows to make sure it was gone, but left his lights on all night. He said he didn't go back to sleep until around daylight, which basically 6 a.m., and went through a pack of cigarettes between 3:30 and 6 a.m. Encounter number 2. I got this one on the way to Oklahoma, to a power plant in Oklahoma. This guy said he was near Falk, Arkansas on I-49. The driver said he was heading south and decided to take his required 30-minute break about 2 o'clock in the morning. There was very little traffic, so he pulled off on an exit ramp and jumped out to relieve himself. He set his air brakes and went around his passenger side of the tractor. He left his lights on and his hazards, and as soon as he was done, he heard footsteps on the gravel in front of him. He said he turned around and saw this very tall creature staring at him. He said it was a dark form as it was just outside the edge of the headlights. He said the eyes were glowing red, and that's the only thing that he could tell me about the features. He said the hair was all black, and he estimated it to be 7 to 7.5 foot tall. He said the Bigfoot just stood there and watched him. He said he faced this thing and kept his back to the truck as he went around to the driver's side. As soon as he opened the driver's door, the Bigfoot made a noise. He could not just tell me what the noise was, whether it was a growl or if it made some other type of noise. He said he could not describe it. He said he scrambled into the cab and locked the door. He said he looked up again, but he never saw the Bigfoot again. He had no idea where it came from or where it went to. As soon as he was sure it was gone, he said, I started grabbing gears and getting out of there. He's estimated that the time that it took for this experience to happen was 30 seconds. He said he had no facial details as it was outside of the headlights and was fairly sure of the hair color. Experience number 3. I got this one on the way to Monticello, Georgia. Where I got this one was Madison, Georgia. This young lady is a convenience store employee, and she said that she was on her way to work at about 3:30 a.m. She was in her 2010 Jeep with a soft top. It was a used vehicle, and her mom and dad had purchased it for her for graduating from high school. While telling me her story, she broke out in a sweat and her voice was trembling. This young lady of 20 was scared telling me her story as this happened in November of 2018. Here is her story. She had to be at work early that day and got up early and got ready. Her dad was up getting ready for his day at his job. He told her to be careful going to work and to watch for the deer. She kissed her dad and headed out the door. She started her Jeep and let it run for a minute before leaving. She backed out and headed down her road. She got to the main road and turned left to go to work. She passed a car just after she got on the main road. About 2 miles from her road, she started up a little hill and saw something in her high beams. It was right in the middle of the road. She slowed down, thinking it was a big person and didn't want to hit them. She got closer and came to a stop about 30 feet from this creature. She knew immediately it was not a person as it had hair all over it. It was facing her and she could see it clearly in her headlights. She saw it had big feet and long black hair on its legs covering part of its feet. The Bigfoot's waist was above the hood of her Jeep, and it definitely was a male. She blushed a bit when she said this. I think she was a little bit embarrassed by that. She went on about the huge ab muscles. They looked like the ones you see on the male models. She said the Bigfoot had hair around the sides of its abs, but the hair was just a couple of inches long. She said she bent over to her steering wheel to see the biggest pecs she has ever seen. The width of this Bigfoot's chest was unbelievable. She said the chest had to be at least 5 foot across. The shoulders were massive, and they had long hair that hung down on them. The arms had long hair on them, and the size of the muscles were twice that of the biggest bodybuilder. She began to describe the head as twice as big as her head. It had really wide set eyes that glowed red. I asked were its eyes emitting light, and she said no. It was more like how you see red eyes in some pictures of people. She said its lips were thin and it had its mouth open slightly. The teeth were a dark yellow, like they were never brushed. I asked about the nose, and she described it like it was wrinkled, and it was looked more like it was a monkey or a gorilla nose. The hair on the head hung down to its eyes in strands. And I asked her if there was anything unusual about the hands or the feet that she noticed. All she could say was they were extremely long hands, and the fingers looked more like the ballpark hot dogs. And I asked her to please describe what she meant. She said, "You know the big hot dogs you get at baseball games? The fingers looked to be at least a couple of inches thick, with the knuckles even bigger." Then she described the feet to be really wide from what she could see, and it had, she thought, 5 toes on each foot. I asked her to describe the width of its feet, and she looked at my boots and she told me that the feet had to be at least 1.5 times the width of my boots. I wear a size 14 triple E. So that means they were at least 9 or 10 inches across. The Bigfoot stood there and looked at her in the Jeep for at least 5 minutes, it seemed. While she was looking at the face, the Bigfoot looked up over her Jeep, and she guesses it saw or heard a car coming. The Bigfoot looked back down at her and turned to its right and walked into the pine thicket on the left side of the road. She snapped out of it as a car pulled up behind her and honked its horn. She drove into work and she was in a daze all day. She got home and told her dad and mom, and they told her they knew that Bigfoot was around. Her dad told her never to speak about this, as nobody would believe her and people would make her out to be crazy. It sounds to me like her dad had saw one before, and whomever he told made fun of him for it. I have one thing to say to her as she is listening tonight, and that is she is a brave young lady, and I believe her. I want to thank you all for coming in tonight to the Old Bear's Den tonight. And if anyone wants to tell their story to Rick, please contact Rick at SasquatchHypothesis@gmail.com. And that's it.
Thanks, Ralph. Anybody have any questions for Ralph in the panel? Ralph, are these written down accounts, or like did you just talk to these people conversationally?
I took notes while we were sitting there having conversation about it. They were wanting to tell me their story because I told them that I'd seen them.
Okay, so is it like you could answer questions, or just what you said is all there was?
No, there was other details that because of the questions I asked that I didn't put in the story.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ralph? Amy?
Yeah, I heard that two of those guys said that, or maybe it was the girl and one of the men, said that they had a nose like a gorilla, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little bit unusual.
Well, my theory is because they were looking up at it. Because I know that them nostrils are flared huge, and if you were looking up at it, it could potentially look like a gorilla's nose. Because it's mashed flat against their head, and then they have huge nostrils. So if you're looking up, I could see it looking like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just usually have heard them described as hooded noses, but didn't think about that.
Not saying that's what it is, but that's what I'm thinking when I heard that.
Yeah. Good job, Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph, we got a question from chat. Mammal in the Woods said, what was the weather like? Raining or winter? Do you know?
The weather for the first story was summertime, and he said it was about 75, 80 degrees at night. And the last one was, she said it was like a cool morning. It wasn't frosting or anything. And the other guy, the one that was near Falk, Arkansas, he said it was just a typical fall evening. It wasn't, it wasn't cold or it wasn't frosting or anything.
Michael, no, they're not Dogman. And these are real accounts told to Ralph while he's an on-the-road trucker, so he talks to people that he runs across with Bigfoot stories, and these are 3 of them. Al Bundy, you have any questions for Ralph? Robert Morgan, yes, she saw his genitalia. She blushed when she mentioned that he was definitely a male. Well, so we assume she saw the genitalia. Darcy, any questions for Ralph?
Yeah, I was wondering how long was the girl's sighting?
She told me it seemed like it was 5 to 7 minutes that she was sitting there looking at this.
Wow.
Yeah, and she took a wild guess at the height of this one, and she told me, she said it had to be close to 10 foot.
Wow. Yeah, so she was definitely looking up his nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I went out and looked at her. She took me out and showed me her vehicle, and it's a one of those lifted Jeeps, and it's sitting on a set of 31, or I think it was 33-inch tires.
Robert Morgan, she didn't go into detail about the genitalia at all. She just mentioned it was a male.
Just wondering, Ralph, each case when when they encounter the creatures, were they showing outright hostility straight off the bat?
The two truck drivers, the first truck driver, I think that the Bigfoot was upset because of the noise that his truck was making. He drives a 389 Peterbilt, and that's the type of truck it is. And they kind of are noisy. And he was idling it to stay cool because it was 75 degrees at night or so in Texas.
Yeah, I can understand that, trying to keep cool in the high humidity.
You gotta imagine too. Here's this lady sitting in her Jeep, and there's this big creature standing in front of her with a schlong hanging out. How the heck? It's like, wow. Just being in shot from seeing the creature itself.
Well, to speak on that, she said that she went to work and she doesn't remember punching in. The only thing she remembers is getting in her Jeep and having to drive right back past where she saw it at 3:30 in the morning at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I imagine it was a big fright, man.
That would be enough to rattle you.
Yeah, Robert Morgan. No, I didn't think you were being weird. I just telling you she didn't go into detail about the genitalia. That's all.
Ralph, did she at any time say that she doubted what she saw?
No, Darcy. She at first she said she didn't know what it was until she got home and told her mom and dad what happened when she left for work. And at that point, her dad looked at her and went, "Yeah, you saw a Bigfoot. So what?"
I can picture her gripping that steering wheel on the way back, white knuckle.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeremy, she said, well, Ralph, Jeremy wants to know if she said how wide the Bigfoot was.
She said the chest of the Bigfoot was at least 5 foot wide. I would say that's probably what she was describing, where the pecs are and its shoulders.
Big boy.
Well, he's 10 feet tall, so I would expect that, yeah.
I would dare to say
Built
it's
like a
probably
brick.
What's that, Al?
Built like a brick.
Yeah. What's that, Ralph?
I would dare to say that was probably the alpha in the area. As big.
Yeah, that size, I would imagine. I mean, hopefully there's not a bigger one, right?
And I'll tell you this, I drove right past where she said she had her sighting. And on the right side of the road as you're heading south is the big pine thicket. And it's not real thick when you first walk into it, but within 10 yards, it gets to the point where at that time of day, you would never be able to see anything. It's real dark in there. And across the road is hardwoods. And then there's a cattle farm just above that little area right there. When you start down the hill, there's a big cattle farm right there beside it.
Jew, I'm assuming you mean how big do they get? I've heard 15 feet, and I've recently heard something 16 feet. But I think that's probably about as big as they're going to get. Assuming that's true, that they get that tall. So, because I don't have one in my garage. I don't think anyone does, But that's the biggest I've heard of is 16 feet. Yeah, the Bigfoot with the girl was interrupted by another car coming up the road.
Hard telling what he would have done.
Well, I asked her that question. If she thought it was being aggressive or not. She said the only thing that she knew, it didn't growl at her, didn't make any movements towards her, and it said it just stood right there in the middle of the road, straddling both yellow lines right in the very center of the road, just standing there, like, yeah, I'm here. What do you want? That's what the feeling she got from it. That's what she told me.
Do you think if she had kept going at the slower pace, do you think he may have tried to snatch her out?
No, I just think that it, like I said, she said it never showed any aggression towards her. Said it just stood there and looked down at her and the vehicle she was in. That's all it did. It just turned and walked off when it saw the other car coming. I guess because it may have thought that it was outnumbered now.
Yeah, Professor Mudd, I think there's more. Some people say there's only 2 to 5,000 of them population in the U.S. I think there's closer. There's at least 15,000 based on just my guess, based on how many encounters there are and that kind of thing, and the fact that there's usually several together. So basically, for every encounter you hear about, you can multiply that encounter by at least 3, because there's going to be at least 3 more where that one came from. Yeah, Michael Case, I think that they're very much like people. Depends on their upbringing, depends on the area they're in, depends on their experience with humans, depends on the food in the area. I think all of these things come together to make them either be aggressive, not aggressive, eat people, not eat people, that kind of thing. That's just my theory, though. Anybody else got any questions?
Ralph, on the story where the creature made a noise, did he say it was like a grunt or a growl or what?
Well, he told me he couldn't describe it, and he said it wasn't like a growl from a bear or anything like that, because he said that he's seen bear up close before and he's heard him growl. He said it was kind of he said it would have to be like a cross between a big Hereford bull starting to bawl and a, I'm trying to think of the word he said. He said it would have to be like a growl from a grizzly crossed with a Hereford bull.
I don't know what that bull sounds like. Crossed with a growl from a grizzly?
Sort of like a bass sound you get, I guess, but deeper.
Yeah, he said it was real deep. Whatever it did, he wasn't sure if it was just. He said it was a short sound, but it just. He said he had to cross it from a Hereford bull because this guy's he hauls cattle, and that's what he knows. And he said a grizzly bear makes a small growl, a loud growl or something. He said you cross both of them together, and that would probably be the closest way.
Well, that's enough to raise your hair.
Yeah, Beta Tech, I haven't heard anything about this Provo, Utah Bigfoot on Fox News. Anybody in panel heard about this?
No, what's that about?
No, I haven't.
Al? We're not
Yeah,
hearing.
sorry guys. Yeah, I have heard of the story. It was 2 Sasquatch that were sighted nearby some buildings after people were out driving.
Say that again, Al.
It was 2 Sasquatch that were filmed in different areas. One was walking up the hill. The other one was near.
Yes, Josh, this is live.
Is that the one where they pulled out the stone out of the ground?
I think that might be the one. They call it the Provo, Utah thing.
Yeah, I listened to that last night.
It's an interesting one. You got to strain to look for the second one. The second one's there, but it's like closer.
Can you post that, Al?
Yeah, I'll see if I can dig it up.
Well, they got that on the news?
Yep, it was posted on the news.
NW Nature Lady, when you say they do a power huff that shakes your core, are you saying that you've heard that yourself? Or... All right, Michael. You have a good night now.
I wonder if it sounds like that huffing I heard that night, Rick.
What, the power huff?
Yeah, where I thought it was maybe $2 were going to go at it.
Yeah.
And I kept listening, and they never fought. And I realized that it wasn't a buck after all. I wonder if it was that kind of sound.
Probably, could be. I think that they probably all make different sounds, just like people's voices are different. I think they have similar sounds, but they sound different. You know what I'm saying? Because of their voices, the size of them, and that kind of thing. Oh, and NW Nature Lady, you've heard that yourself, huh? Have you had an encounter? Have you seen one?
Thanks, Al.
Not a problem.
Where did he post it? I don't see it.
It's in chat.
Yeah, that's where I put it, chat.
I'll have to look at it later. This mouse is messes. I'm having a hard time with this mouse. I'll end up closing out the show or something if I do anything.
Now, you said one was in Falk, Arkansas, right?
Yeah, it was on I-49 near Falk, Arkansas. He said he wasn't too far from Falk.
Close to the Boggy Creek?
Well, Boggy Creek is actually on the far side of Falk. So he was within, I think he told me it was within about 8.5, 10 miles of Boggy Creek.
Well, that's not too far from it. Not the way they travel.
So all of you who are having Bigfoot experiences or talking about them, you can come right here into Discord and discuss them, just like the panel is right now. There's people in here in and out all day, 24/7. Then you get in there, and next show I can discuss your encounter with you.
And it's real easy to do, folks. Just download Discord and go to Sasquatch Hypothesis.
And I can tell you from personal experience, if you come in and do an interview with Rick, it sure does help you feel better about seeing him.
I can second that.
Well, thanks, guys. So did Al post that video for y'all to see?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Did you watch it?
Not
I
yet.
haven't seen it.
No, because the people in chat are wondering what your reactions are to it.
I've watched it a few times. You can definitely see something's going on. Two of them are actually slowly.
Is it up close or is it way distant kind of thing?
It's a distant kind of thing, and they were shooting it on their mobile phones, if I remember.
It's distant, and there's buildings in the front, and there's one to the right, and there's a main building in the middle, and right behind it is the other one.
Oh, I think that's the one where they walked up there and they found boot prints. So it was somebody up there walking around.
They found boot prints. So they're saying it wasn't Sasquatch, it was actual people.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh Hill, go ahead right there. Discord. Download the Discord app and join us in Discord, and we'll talk to you. There's people in and out of here. My Discord server 24/7. And if you're in here when I'm doing a show, I'll talk to you about your heavy on the show if you want. Okay, well, folks, I hope I see some of you join up in Discord. And usually people are hanging out in Campfire. Most of the panel hops into Campfire after the show and can talk to you about your encounters. And I am going to go ahead and close out the show. And so until next time, y'all take it easy.